Well, welcome back. Today is part three of how the Democrats have stolen America. So let's go back to Lyndon Baines Johnson. LBJ, in his racist agenda, used the Civil Rights Bill as crumbs to encourage blacks to vote Democratic. I mean, his goal, he said, and this is a quote from him, his goal was to, and I quote LBJ, quote, keep these niggers voting Democratic for 200 years, close quote. Today's Democrats don't like to hear about their own Klan history. So they shift the blame, accusing Republicans of what they're guilty of. Hence, gaslighting is the soup du jour from the Democratic kitchen. The big switch, as it was called, right? So Democrats switching to Republicans, Republicans switching to Democrats, were blacks predominantly voting Republican, now, now vote Democrat. They were hoodwinked by the lying and scheming Democrats. Southern Democrats now vote Republican. Then there's Strom Thurmond, the racist Democrat who turned Republican. Well, here's the truth. Blacks switched to the Democratic Party based on a lie fed to them by FDR and the New Deal. The Southern Democrats moved to the Republicans much later in the 70s through the 90s when the South became more prosperous, let's say. Racism declined in the South, actually. And I've traveled throughout the South and I've seen it. Blacks, whites, they get along well in the South, they're gentlemanly. Both races treat each other to a degree with respect. But what happened was the South became more prosperous, right? And that's when racism declined, as I just spoke about. But the Republican blacks and whites both switched for economic reasons. And there's proof that the poorest and most racist whites never switched to Republicans in the South. The KKK never switched. The most various racist organizations never switched to Republicans. Democratic congressmen in the South never switched to Republicans. Senators that were Democrats in the South never switched. Less than 1% of those people ever switched to being Republicans. So you see, the racist Democrats never switched. They just found a new and bigger scam. In the 60s and 70s, black Democrats moved en masse, many to the north. And the Democrats' idea was to create a new plantation. Hence, the housing projects and ghettos were born. So, what I want to do is, when we talk about this, I wanted to hear from Obama directly. Hold on.
We'd always be second-class citizens. Plantation politics, the man with the newspaper said. That's just what it was, too. A plantation. Black people in the worst jobs, the worst housing, police brutality rampant. But when the so-called black commitment came around election time, we'd all line up and vote the straight Democratic ticket. Sell our souls for Christmas turkey. White folks spitting in our faces when we reward them with the vote. So what has...
And that's Obama, in his own words, talking about the plantation mentality. But what did Obama do to get rid of those plantations? Nothing. Why? Because he was running them. Now, the Democrats, right, they needed a pitch as to how to move from just inner city plantations to running the entire nation. And they determined a plan to wrest control of everything in a large, controlling central government, right? Kind of like communism does, right? It's all in the Politburo, it's all centralized, right? Hence, it's called progressivism in America. In Russia, it's communism. In Italy, it was fascism. Now, FDR, by the way, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, had very nice things to say about Mussolini. Mussolini had read FDR's book and praised him for it. And also, which is a whole nother story, FDR, Churchill, and Stalin, they redefined and reorganized basically all of Eastern Europe. So, one of the main ideals of modern progressivism is the idea of eugenics, right? And Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, comes to mind as its leader. In the mid 1920s, Sanger gave a speech, and the women of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, came to hear her in full regalia, hoods and white sheets. Sanger called the blacks the weeds which prevent the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization. How awful is that? Margaret Sanger said that. You see, lynching had become taboo, and Sanger had a new way to dispose of the blacks. She developed what was called, quote, the Negro Project, which sterilized black women, many not even knowing what was actually happening to them. She actually hired black ministers to sell her ideas to their communities and congregants. How awful. Well, in 2009, Hillary Clinton said she admired Margaret Sanger. But as per Alveda King, she stated the vast majority of Planned Parenthood clinics are in black areas. And she noted that when the parts of babies were being sold off, and there's a whole undercover project that shows people speaking to these executives in Planned Parenthood how much they wanted for body parts. And they said, well, how much do you want for this, that, and the other thing? And this woman, not knowing she was being filmed, said, I want enough to buy a Lamborghini.
Planned Parenthood is accused of some disturbing crimes today. Anti-abortion activists released an undercover video filmed last year. It claims to show a senior official discussing how the organization sells aborted baby parts. Activists posed as potential buyers.
We've been very good at getting parts on liver because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see that get out intact.
After World War II, the Democrats did away with progressive as it was thought to be tied to eugenics and fascism. And they kind of needed rebranding, right? So enter Saul Alinsky. And that can be a whole different conversation that we have about Saul Alinsky. We may do a whole series on him alone, right? They made him seem as he was the tireless crusader for social justice. The real Alinsky emerges in March of 1972 interview he gave the year of his death to Playboy magazine. And he described his ticket scam. When he was in college and he went in and he was saying to himself, I'm a smart guy, but I can't make money. I can't afford to eat. And he was sitting there in one of these cafeterias where they gave you a small ticket with how much you had to pay. So he took a 5-cent ticket for a cup of coffee, brought it to the cashier and said, gee, I'm really sorry, I lost my ticket. And the woman said, oh, you just had a cup of coffee, that's 5 cents. Well, he paid that 5 cents and he took that ticket and went to another cafeteria, which was made up, there was a chain of the same cafeterias, and he ordered a big elaborate meal off to the side where no one could see him. When he got his ticket, he kept that ticket and he went up to the front and provided that 5 cents ticket and paid 5 cents for that big meal. And that gave him the idea. He went back to college, his dormitory, and he put up a sign where he would teach people, right? He would teach them how to eat for free. And he generated money from them in teaching them how to eat free. And he did that. He set up a map of all the various cafeterias that were in different parts of Chicago. And he basically sold that idea and he made money. Then actually after that, he did his doctoral dissertation. He got money for that. And he on the criminal aspects of Al Capone mob. After learning from the Al Capone mob, he used his knowledge of crime to influence community organizing. And he actually, who did he become a big influencer of? Obama, right? Obama and Olinsky used the teachings of Alinskyite techniques to do his, community organizing. Well, from the Olinsky plan came Obamacare, right? He figured that whole scam out. And the reason for Obamacare was to enable the feds to take over the healthcare industry, which is 1/6 of the US economy. I think we're going to end here today with that because that was a lot to digest, and we're going to go over from that point forward in our next meeting. But I think we're doing really well here, exposing the Democrats for who they are. They're scam artists, they're thugs, they gaslight everybody. And I think this is really eye-opening to many of you. So looking forward to our continued conversations. And by the way, please follow me on X, Bill Golodner. Follow me on X. Go to Ad Newswire on YouTube and subscribe. Hit the like buttons. And we really appreciate you doing that. So looking forward to seeing you soon, and we're going to continue our conversations. Also, if you want to appear on one of our videos, please send me a message and contact me, and we'll have you come on and we'll discuss certain things that you'd like to talk about, or we may have other content that we're going to put forward. Looking forward to it. Thanks very much. And remember this: God bless America. God bless you.